Hi. Before I get started, I want to give a huge shout out to my friend that is my hairstylist. I absolutely love it. Last week, when I was at a very low point, she came over, she cheered me up, and of course, she refreshed my look, which was so needed. But I absolutely adore the job she did. And this hairstyle has lasted like 4 days. She's amazing. Rosalie, best of the best. How is everybody's week going? I'm slowly but surely getting better. Still working on introducing small amounts of food to my diet, still drinking water, doing better day by day. Still working through missing the boss, but I'm getting better day by day. But I hope you guys are doing great because you've got questions. I've got answers. Let's do some Q&A. Today we're going to be talking about planning a multi-generational trip. But before we get started, if this is your first time here, welcome. I am Gretchen, the Tipsy Travel Gal, and I am a licensed esthetician and a travel agent. And it is my goal to eat, drink, and spa my way around the world, showing you some amazing things to see, fun things to do, and of course, delicious things to eat and drink. Yes, this is still water. It has to be. Still nowhere near being able to introduce alcohol to my ravaged stomach. My hope is that that's going to encourage you to travel, whether that be international or domestic. So if that sounds interesting to you, please consider subscribing to my channel because I have this type of content and a whole bunch of other content that I put out on a weekly basis, sometimes more frequently than others. It depends upon what is currently going on, but I always try to keep things going. Also in the description is a link to my GoFundMe page. That is from when I kind of first started this journey. My journey is quickly changing. Got some exciting things coming along that I can't quite talk about yet. So I will be updating that. But yeah, if you want to go check that out, see where I started and where I've come from, and kind of get an idea where I'm going. And if you have a couple extra dollars to spare, I would greatly appreciate that as well. But let's talk multi-generational trips. So multi-generational trips are exactly what they sound like. That's where you've got a family traveling together with a very large age span. It usually runs like grandparents through grandkids, but depending upon the actual ages and health of people, sometimes it can even be great grandparents. We also can sprinkle like extended family in there, but that is a multi-generational trip. Now, if you're either thinking about taking a multi-generational trip or you're in the process of it, I'd love to hear where you're going. Please drop it in the comments. And of course, if you need any advice or you'd like to help me plan, I would be happy to help you do that. But I definitely am excited to see what you guys are planning for your future travel. I'm sure you're thinking, well, isn't it the same as planning all kinds of travel? Yes, but there are things to keep in mind when you are planning a trip. We are going to start with the 5 W's plus an H, and that is the who, what, where, when, why, and of course, how, starting off with why. Now, most people skip this step. This is a really important piece of the multi-generational trip because it's going to define why you're taking all of these people with you. Are you going for relaxation purposes? You just want to scoop all the kids and grandkids up and, go land a beach somewhere for a week or visit an amusement park or maybe go skiing in the Alps? Do you want to introduce your family to your roots? My father is from Germany. I know he would probably love to go to Germany, drink some of that delicious German beer, and definitely eat that delicious German food. Also, I have relatives that are buried in Europe, Belgium, all the way through Normandy. I had several family members die in the Battle of the Bulge. We've talked about, as a family, taking one of those types of trips as well. Are you celebrating a milestone? I went to Europe for 2.5 weeks for my 50th birthday, anniversaries, graduations. So once you define that why, it's going to help you sculpt where you want to go. Once you kind of determine that why you're going, next you have to pick who's going. If you're wondering why we're not doing where next, that's because you need to figure out who's going on the trip. And that is incredibly important in a multi-generational trip. First of all, when I'm planning that for someone, the first thing I ask is, what is the age span? Are we talking grade school children through senior citizens? Are we talking a smaller span? Are we talking about adult grandchildren? That age span makes a huge difference when you're picking your where, which is the next W, because what 10-year-olds like to do isn't the same thing as what 80-year-olds like to do. And that becomes increasingly important when you are planning the details of your trip. Also, something else to keep in mind with the WHO for multi-generational trips is mobility and health. Now, age is just a number. In 2023, an 84-year-old woman participated and finished the Chicago Marathon. I can't even run like down the street without like collapsing. But not all 84-year-olds are built alike. Let me give you an example. I got a phone call from 3 daughters that wanted to take their widowed father, who was 90, to Ireland. He was Irish. He always wanted to go there, and they wanted to plan this huge trip, the whole 9 yards. They gave me their budget, and and it was all the hot points. Blarney Stone, the Cliffs of Moher. I mean, they had a list. So I didn't even think to ask if the 90-year-old could do that. Of course, I was a young travel agent then, and not age-wise, meaning like my years in the industry. I now know to ask, can a 90-year-old do these things? Because I spent the time, put together an itinerary with their budget, and they called me angry. The question when they asked wasn't, can a 90-year-old man do these things? It was, we want a 90-year-old to do these things. And when they started looking at the itinerary, turns out that he was very mobility impaired. He walked with a walker. I mean, there was no way he was getting to the top to see the Blarney Stone. You have to climb up like 80 stairs to see that. They didn't share that with me. Of course, I did not ask. I now know to ask. But my job is not to talk you out of taking a trip, right? But I am going to set your expectations. So now that conversation would have gone, oh, how wonderful, you want to take your 90-year-old father on this trip. What's his mobility like? Because it's all uneven terrain. You're going to have to hike. You're going to have to climb. This might not be the best option for him. We can maybe scale something down and you could do a driving trip, but he's not going to be able to participate in some of these activities. So that is really important, especially if a younger person is planning this trip, not to overextend the abilities of the older participants. Once you have an idea of why and who's going to be going, now is the fun part where you get to decide where. Where do you want to go on this trip? Believe it or not, I frequently get calls with the where. Now, some people know exactly where they want to go, but very frequently I get phone calls where people have no idea where they want to go. They just have an idea. And that's actually okay, because I'm here to help guide those decisions. But when you're dealing with a multi-generational trip, there are things to consider. First and foremost, are you traveling domestically or internationally? Because if you're going international, everybody has to have a passport. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean if people don't have passports, they can't go, but you're probably going to have to push that trip out a little bit so everybody has time to get passports. Also, verify that they're still good for a certain amount of time, so on, and so forth. Also, when you are traveling with minors, if their parents aren't coming with you, you have to remember that you need to get permission from their parents. There are standard documents that you can download and sign. It's all good. But again, that's something that people don't think about when they are planning a multi-generational trip until it's like the day before. Once you've got that where locked down, then you get to start with the fun part, which is the what. What do you want to do while you're on this trip? Now, when you're dealing with a multi-generational group of people, there's like several things to keep in mind, and that is, as I said previously, what a 10-year-old wants to do is not necessarily the same thing that an 80-year-old wants to do. Are you going to make everybody do the same thing, or are you going to give people alternatives? And if not, are you going to have accommodations? A lot of people will get really inexpensive accommodations because, quote unquote, we're not going to be in the room anyway. Well, if not everybody wants to go on an excursion, they're probably going to be left behind in the room if they are the type of people that are going to go out and explore on their own. So it is actually really important to be able to kind of come up with an idea of what you want to do and plug all of those pieces together. Also, the other thing is, are people going to be able to separate? Me personally, I like to plan multi-generational trips where they're either in accommodations that are relaxing, so that if people want to go off for 2 hours and somebody wants to stay back and maybe take a nap or watch a movie, or maybe they want to go to dinner, that is fine too. But there are some people who insist on the whole group staying together the whole time. I mean, to me, each his own, but that option for me is always nice to have. So we've got the basics of this trip nailed down, except for the final W, which is when. Now, when you are planning a trip for you and your spouse, or maybe even you and your family, you have an idea what everybody's schedules are. But when you're planning a multi-generational trip, you need to know everybody's schedules. You need to be able to nail down when you're going. For example, you think it would be amazing to take your grandkids on a Disney cruise? I agree with you. I think that would be a fantastic trip to take your grandkids on, but you have very limited time to do that throughout the year, right? If they're in school, that means you can take them out only certain times of the year. And usually those times of the year are the more expensive times. So you're looking at Christmas break, you're looking at spring break, and of course during the summer. Otherwise, you're going to be pulling them out of school, which sometimes that's not gonna fly, especially if it's an extended trip. I have had grandparents call me before and talk about doing a multi-generational trip, and it's like, we need to find out what the kids' schedules are, and suddenly things change when the pricing changes. So those are all things to keep in mind in a multi-generational trip. And I do think that sometimes when people retire, retirees have a totally different flexible lifestyle than people who are working, and the lifestyle is even more inhibited by children who are in school. So again, something to consider when planning a multi-generational trip. Once the 5 W's are complete, then we get to the part that I usually take over, the how. This is all the crazy little details that no one ever thinks about. This is the how. How are you going to make this happen? Are you all coming from the same location? I've planned trips where people will come in from like 6 different states. Are you all going to stay in one location? Are multiple hotel rooms okay? Adjoining or not? Or do you want a villa, or do you want to rent a home? I have done multi-generational trips where they have stayed in hotel rooms. I have done suites, and I've even done a Colombia trip. They rented out an entire boutique hotel to themselves. How are you getting from one place to the next? Do you all want to travel together? Are you going to want a shuttle service? If you've got more than like 5 to 6 people going on a trip, those details alone can be very time-consuming and difficult to figure out if you don't know who to call. Finally, when you're dealing with a multi-generational trip, the final piece of that how is who's paying. Listen, I'm a lot more willing to do things that maybe I'm not up for if I'm not paying. I don't have children. I do enjoy amusement parks, not as much as I used to, because with age comes things like vertigo. But would I want to go to Disney for a week? I don't know. Probably not. It might be fun for a day, maybe even 2. I mean, there's tons of shopping, and there's tons of food, and there are things to do in the park. But you know, after that, I might want to do other things. But if somebody's paying for me to go to Disney World for a week, dosh gone right, I'm going to go. Something else I've actually dealt with as well was I had a lovely older gentleman who was retired that wanted to take his entire family on a cruise. He booked all of their rooms, he arranged everything, he got the flights, all that kind of good stuff. And he was struggling to come up with a final payment. I was trying to work with him, trying to get extensions. Things weren't working out. And then all of a sudden I got a phone call from one of his children that they wanted to upgrade their room. And we're talking like $1,000 upgrade. And yeah, I was like, I can't just upgrade. Are you going to pay for this? Because your father's paying for it? And oh yeah, no worries. It's like, yeah, no. I called Dad. So Those are really important things. I have coordinated trips where some people pay for all the lodging, some people pay for all the airfare. These are things that need to be discussed beforehand because believe me, budgets can explode. The travel agency I worked for, they actually had a Hawaii cruise trip that was going on with, a couple days extra here, a couple days before, a couple days after staying in Honolulu. The trip ended up being $100,000. So incredibly important with the how. So the how can be the trickiest part, and that is usually where it is a great idea to get someone like me, a travel agent, involved to help you make the right decisions. So I hope that gave you an idea on how to start planning a multi-generational trip. Again, there's a lot of moving pieces, and when you've got a large group of people, it can be tough, but if you start with those 5 things and move forward, a lot easier than just trying to do it on the fly. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions on the content of this video, please feel free to comment below. Or if you have any questions that you would like assistance with, please enter those below as well. I would be happy to turn that into a Q&A. If commenting on YouTube isn't your thing, you can reach out to me on any of the social media platforms. I am Tipsy Travel Gal on all of the main platforms that are out there. Also, you can go to my website, tipsytravelgal.com. If you look at the top, there is a menu and there's a contact me link. And if you click on that, it will take you to a page that will allow you to send me an email. If you like this video, please give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Again, thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate it. I hope you are all having a great week. And until the next time, bye.